Hey everybody, I'm going to do an example of what one of your mini introduction speeches could possibly look like, okay? So I'm going to talk to you today about my family. I'm going to use a PowerPoint, which you do not have to do, but I'm going to use a PowerPoint for this one and just kind of give you an idea of what you might do when in 2 weeks when you have to do this for the class, okay? So I'm entitling my speech, A River Rat Tale, because I grew up in a town called Beardstown, Illinois, in the middle of the cornfields of Illinois, on the Illinois River. The river was a big part of our life, and it was Beardstown's about halfway between Chicago up north and St. Louis down south, okay? Beardstown had about 6,500 people. We were the biggest, by far, the biggest town in our county. And all around us, the towns around us, and even the counties around us, when they would talk about somebody from Beardstown, they would call us river rats. And they did not mean that in a nice way. But we took it as a badge of honor. And we were very proud to say we're river rats. Okay, so this is my river rat tale, Beardstown, Illinois. Okay, so let me start off by talking about my grandparents on my father's side. This is my grandmother, Alice, and my grandfather, Clarence. Okay, my grandfather, Clarence, was a mechanic. He worked on cars and he worked on motorboats. He had a motorboat shop in Beardstown. Okay, now, Grandpa Clarence, his nickname was Shorty Boyce. And even when I was, out of high school, I'd come back to town and people would say, hey, you're Shorty Boyce's grandson, aren't you? And I would say, yes, I am, right? Small town, everybody knew everybody. The family had been there for years, okay? Now, on my grandmother's side, Alice Hill was her maiden name. The family roots actually go back to Scotland, to the Flemings. And we didn't really know much about them until just a couple of years ago. We were actually contacted out of the blue by Susan Johnston, who's from the family Fleming. And she was tracking down family members who had gone to the United States. And we found each other on the DNA websites, right? We had DNA matching and she got a hold of us. And so we now talk to our cousins in Scotland, which is really pretty cool. And this is Susan with her dad. And that's our family Fleming tartan around the outside, right? Yeah, and this has just been tons of fun. And Susan says, if any of us come back over to visit, that she can take us up in the mountains and show us the pile of stones. It's all that's left of the Fleming cottage in the Highlands where the 10 kids, dispersed around the world. So that's very, very cool, right? Now, on my mother's side, it's completely different, right? This is my grandmother, Aurora, and my grandfather, Cirilio. Now, my grandmother, Aurora, her maiden name was Aragon, Spanish, right? My grandfather, Cirilio, was primarily Apache, about 3/4 Apache, which if you do the math, makes me about 3/16 Apache. And I know I don't look like it, right? But I am. But my grandmother and grandfather lived in Trinidad, Colorado, did not speak English. They're Spanish speakers, right? And here's a picture of my grandfather, Cirilio, with his headdress. That's him on the right with the drum, getting ready to do one of the community functions. It was a very big part of their lives still. We've lost that completely with my generation. My mother didn't really continue any of this with us, didn't even teach us, raise us to speak Spanish. But my grandmother, who my grandfather passed when I was very young, my grandmother I knew way up until like about high school years, and she did not speak English, but I learned to speak enough Spanish that we got along very well, right? Okay. Now then, just to show you the Native American resemblance, this is my cousin Rose. Right? And you can see it right here. Definitely Native American heritage. Rose, my mom and her sisters used to tell us all kinds of stories about the family. One of the things that they would tell us is that back deep in our family history, we had an Indian princess in our family, which is just a lot of fun. But man, when I look at this picture of Rose, I can see it. I can see it, right? Now, here's my parents. My father and my mother, Charles and Esther. On the left, that's them when they're young and dashing in the 50s, getting ready to go out on the town. And then on the right is a picture of my mother, Esther, and my big sister, Cheryl. And then that's me, the little gringo baby, right? Where did this kid come from, right? But I just don't look like my mother's side of the family at all. Okay. Now here I am growing up a little bit. My family were big hunters, and this is the deer camp. Get ready to go deer hunting when I was in, I don't know, probably 6th grade or something like that, right? But I'm about as unexotic right? As you can imagine, I'm just your plain vanilla looking American kid, right? But I'm actually very, very mixed heritage, okay? Now, here's my family at the family farm. We would gather every Memorial Day weekend for a big family reunion. And this is us, and I'm gonna bring my cursor over here. Maybe you can see it here, right? That's my dad, right? And by then, this is his wife, Charlene, my stepmom, right? And then over here is me, there I am. This would have been, I think, about the time I was living in Boston, so somewhere around the mid-90s or so, okay? But we would do this every Memorial Day weekend, and they can get a picture of the Boyce clan at the family farm. Now, this is my Aunt Evelyn, my dad's oldest sibling. She was the matriarch of the family. She kept us all in line, right? Now, at the farm, they had horses, of course, but they also had huskies. Aunt Evelyn used to breed, right, and train Siberian huskies. And so we always had huskies at the farm. We had a sled that had wheels on it, so we get pulled around the farm in the summertime when she was working with the dogs, which was pretty cool. Okay, then being hunters, sometimes we go out behind the farmhouse and we would shoot our guns. Right, just what we did. My dad was a gunsmith, and everybody in the family owned guns and shotguns, and a lot of the women were crack shot way better than me. I was never very good shooting, but boy, we had some good shots in the family, and that's just something we did, right? But still do. Everybody in the family still owns guns. Okay. Now then, this is me back when I was when I was your age. This is me coming home from Purdue one summer for the family reunion, and we would have every Memorial Day weekend we would have a strawberry shortcake. Aunt Eva would make this giant shortcake, and I think it was like 22 or 24 quarts of strawberries it took to make this shortcake. But that was the family tradition. Every summer was the family tradition, right, to have the strawberry shortcake. Now, in the wintertime, we didn't have strawberry shortcake. We had red velvet cake. So every Thanksgiving and every Christmas, Aunt Eva would make a red velvet cake, and that was what we did. And this is me enjoying. Oh, it's good stuff, right? Enjoying. Now, I make red velvet cakes. I haven't for a while, but I used to make them all the time, make them from scratch from Aunt Evelyn's recipe. That's what the main thing I learned to cook from my mom's or my dad's side of the family. From my mom's side of the family, it's tortillas. My little, Spanish grandma taught me how to make tortillas, and I still do that. So I got a little bit from both sides of the family that I do. Now, this is a funny story. This is me sitting with my Uncle Fish. My Uncle Fish, I was about this age, so in my 20s, when I learned that my Uncle Fish's name was in fact not Fish. I just grew up with my Uncle Fish. Turns out his real name is Durwood. Now his last name is Fry. And at some point when he was younger, he told his friends he would rather be called Fish Fry than Durwood Fry, and the name stuck. But nobody told us kids, he was just Uncle Fish. So it was a long time before I found out the truth about that, which is kind of funny when you think about it. Okay, so now this is my big sister, Cheryl. I call her Little Big Sis, right, because she's not even 5 feet tall. But anyway, this is Cheryl and I. We were up in Indianapolis having a dinner with a bunch of the cousins who had come in from different places to get together. And anyway, that's not a very old picture, maybe 2-3 years old, something like that. But that kind of brings you up to date with my family. Like I say, we're river rats, and we're proud to be river rats. The river has always been a big part of our lives. And this is just an example of something you might do for your first mini introduction speech. You can talk about your family, you can talk about your friends, you can talk about a hobby or some big thing you did that was important to you. You can use a PowerPoint or not, right? It's real, and look in Canvas. The assignment is in Canvas. All kinds of ideas of how you can go about this, right? But this is just one to give you a general idea of what it might look like. And I'm going to probably do another one and post them both. Probably do not about my family, but something else. Okay. But anyways, be thinking about this in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, you all are each going to have to be on Zoom doing this and talking to the class, maybe sharing your screen. So we're kind of working our way up to that. Okay. That's coming up quicker than you think. So I'm going to wrap this up and I'll catch you later. Bye-bye.